Oh no, I'm so sorry.
Oh, Lyra, it's all right, really. Don't worry.
Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into a force of nature that is just absolutely awe-inspiring and, honestly, pretty terrifying. We're talking about the earth-shattering power of earthquakes. I mean, have you ever stopped to really think about how the solid ground beneath our feet, something we rely on to be perfectly stable, can just suddenly violently shake? Today, we're going to explore that massive release of energy from the lithosphere, energy that travels as seismic waves and literally reshapes our world. We're going to break down the mechanics behind this absolute monster. Together, let's get into it.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here's our roadmap for today. We'll start with a breaking point, move into the anatomy of a quake, follow the underground wave race, look at surface waves and destruction, and finally we'll wrap up with measuring the monster. Section 1, the breaking point, where energy begins. So how does solid Earth suddenly just snap?
Well, it all starts with what geologists call the elastic rebound theory. Deep down, the Earth is incredibly dynamic. We've got these massive tectonic plates that make up the crust, and they're constantly trying to move past each other. But here's the catch. They don't slide smoothly. Because of the immense friction, they actually get stuck. They basically lock completely in place, even though the crazy forces beneath them are still pushing and pulling. Think of this process literally like pulling a giant, incredibly thick rubber band. First, the plates stick together. Then, as the Earth keeps trying to move, this immense stress builds up in the rocks. And we're not talking over a few days here. This stress accumulates over decades, sometimes centuries. And then you get step 3, the sudden snap. In a fraction of a second, centuries of locked-up pressure are violently released in one massive burst of energy.
Now, while shifting tectonic plates are definitely the main culprits here, they aren't the only things upsetting the Earth's delicate balance. Volcanic activity, specifically the movement of magma underground, can totally trigger massive shaking. We also see collapse-related quakes in really deep underground mining operations, and, kind of wild to think about, but human activities play a role too. Filling enormous dam reservoirs or, underground nuclear explosions can actually change the pressure on the crust and trigger this exact same snapping effect. Moving right along to Section 2, Anatomy of a Quake, deep below the surface. You've probably heard these two terms thrown around on the news, but the distinction between them is absolutely crucial. The hypocenter, also known as the focus, is the exact deep underground point where the rock physically breaks. The epicenter, on the other hand, is just the point on the surface of the Earth directly above the hypercenter. It's really important to keep this straight because the epicenter is basically just the roof. The actual detonation, the true structural failure, that happens way down at the hypocenter.
And keep in mind, an earthquake isn't just a one-and-done jolt. It's a whole sequence. It often starts with foreshocks, which act as a sort of eerie early warning as the rock begins to give way. Then comes the main shock. That's your most powerful jolt where the maximum energy is unleashed. But it doesn't end there. Next come the aftershocks. These happen because the Earth's crust has just been violently displaced, and it's actively trying to settle and adjust into a brand new, highly altered position.
Let's move to Section 3 and see how this builds. The underground wave race, energy in motion.
So the rocks have snapped, the energy is released, and it starts traveling through the body of the Earth in two primary forms. You can honestly picture this like a crazy underground race. First out of the gate are the P waves, or primary waves. They are the absolute fastest, and their special superpower is that they can travel through literally anything: solid rock, liquid magma, even gas. Trailing behind them are the S waves, or secondary waves. They're slower, but here is the critical limitation. S waves can only travel through solid materials. If they hit a liquid, boom, stop dead in their tracks.
And that specific limitation creates something incredibly fascinating. Because S-waves just absolutely refuse to travel through liquids, seismologists noticed this massive blind spot exactly 105 degrees away from any earthquake's epicenter. In this specific zone, the S-waves just vanish. They never show up.
This is such an awesome aha moment in science. Without ever actually digging down there, scientists realized that because those S-waves are completely blocked, the center of our planet, specifically the outer core, must be entirely liquid. The S-waves hit that liquid core and are completely stopped, creating that shadow zone we just talked about. It's just a brilliant piece of natural detective work.
All right, Section 4. Things get a bit dark here. surface waves, and destruction. The final impact. When those racing underground body waves finally hit the surface, they convert into surface waves. And these are the real agents of destruction. They work in two terrifying ways. First, you have love waves, which violently shake the ground side to side, left and right. Then you have Rayleigh waves. Imagine the solid ground rolling under you, exactly like an ocean wave. That's a Rayleigh wave. This simultaneous twisting, rolling, and sideways shearing is exactly why modern engineers have to design skyscrapers that can literally bend and sway without snapping.
But aside from the shaking itself, surface waves cause these secondary phenomena that seriously sound like they belong in a sci-fi movie. One of the absolute most dangerous is soil liquefaction. This happens when violent shaking agitates waterlogged solid ground so intensely that it loses all its stiffness. The solid earth literally turns into a liquid, quicksand-like swamp. We've seen entire buildings, perfectly intact, simply sink straight down into the earth. No way around it, it's terrifying.
So you can see how one single snap deep underground triggers a massive chain of disasters, totally depending on the geography of the area. The ground shaking collapses structures. Coastal displacement triggers massive, destructive tsunamis. Mountain vibrations bring down millions of tons of rock in catastrophic landslides. The devastation just cascades so rapidly from that one single deep earth fracture. Which brings us to our final stage, Section 5. Measuring the monster, quantifying the quake. So how on earth do we even attempt to put a number on this kind of immense, uncontrollable power? Well, we actually look at it in two entirely different ways. The moment magnitude scale is purely mathematical. It measures the total raw physical energy released right at the hypocenter. The Mercalli scale, on the other hand, is purely observational. It uses Roman numerals to measure the actual physical destruction inflicted on human society at a specific location. How many buildings fell, how intensely people felt the shaking. Basically, one measures the raw physics, the other measures the human impact.
But here is the truly terrifying math behind that moment magnitude scale. It's logarithmic. What that means is that an earthquake doesn't just increase steadily. A step up of just one whole number on the scale, say moving from a magnitude 6 to a magnitude 7, means the quake just released 32 times more energy. So a magnitude 8 isn't just a little bit worse than a 6, it's practically an entirely different beast altogether.
And where is all this math playing out the most? Well, the vast majority of the world's seismic energy is released in a massive horseshoe-shaped area known as the Ring of Fire, or the Circum-Pacific Belt. This is hands down the most active zone on the planet for tectonic friction. It's a region where the mechanics we've explored today, the sticking plates, the decades of building stress, the sudden violent snaps, are just repeating on a continuous loop, generating the absolute most powerful earthquakes on Earth. Which brings us to a final, pretty provocative thought. The Earth is a highly dynamic system. We absolutely cannot stop the tectonic plates from shifting, and we definitely can't stop the rocks from snapping. The forces are just way too immense. But by decoding the mechanics of these waves and deeply understanding these fault lines, the real question becomes, are we engineering a future stable enough to survive it? The Earth is shifting, but human science and resilient engineering are racing to meet it head-on. It's a high-stakes race for sure. But with every explainer and every new piece of data, we get a little bit better at surviving the monster. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I really hope the incredible hidden mechanics of earthquakes are now perfectly clear. Catch you next time.